Evening and thank you for joining us on India Business Hour. I'm Ashmit Kumar and here are the headlines that we're tracking at this hour. Markets end with gains for the second straight day in a row. All sectoral indices except Nifty FMCG trade in the green. The rupee ends weaker compared to yesterday. China relaxes COVID curbs further. It will be scrapping its quarantine requirement for international passengers from the 8th of January. The nation reported 20,000 new cases on an average last week. As per the World Health Organization, it has not released data since the 23rd of December. The RBI's annual report on banking trends points towards improving health of the banking sector, says bank balance sheets have been double-digit growth after a gap of 7 years, with both banking and non-banking entities reporting an overall improvement in asset quality. Adds that frauds have dropped 56% year-on-year, but penalties levied on RBI on banks has doubled to 64 crore rupees. The waiting period for Digital India Bill gets longer. Sources tell CNBC-TV18 that the regulatory framework needs more work. The draft bill, which aims to replace the existing IT Act, will now be released for public comments by early 2023. 5 out of 12 companies, including Ola and Uber, scored a 0 in a report that rated digital platforms on the basis of work conditions for gig workers. Farmeasy, Dunzo and Amazon Flex also scored a 0. Urban Company, with a score of 7 out of 10, is the best performer. Mock drills conducted across hospitals in India to check preparedness of the health facilities as the government steps up its COVID vigilance. Only 163 new COVID cases reported in the last 24 hours as active cases hover around the 3,400 mark. No new deaths have been reported. Ukraine says Russian army attacked dozens of towns in eastern Ukraine a day after Moscow accused it of attacking its airbase miles away from the front line. Minister Lavrov issues an ultimatum, asks Ukraine to surrender Russian-controlled territories. Ukraine President Zelensky says nearly 9 million people remain without electricity. North India in the midst of a cold wave. Delhi witnesses one of its coldest Decembers in years on Monday. The Met Department has said that the situation may improve in the next 2 days, but predicted fresh spell of cold wave conditions during New Year's. Well, the view from the markets, despite a volatile session, markets ended with gains. For a second straight session, Sensex and Nifty ended over 0.5% in the green, while mid-caps outperformed. That index ended over 1% higher. Metal stocks led from the front. All sectoral indices ended higher except for the Nifty FMCG. Prashant Nair is here with a quick wrap of the day's market action. Prashant.
Well, the pullback continues. A lot of people in the morning were doubting whether yesterday was a one-day wonder. And I think today's session put some of those doubts to rest. So we had a decent day and not very much by way of volatility, although the market did come off a little bit from the highs of the day. Banks did a little lesser as compared to the Nifty. I'll get to specifics. Broader markets were fine. Mid-caps and small caps. Advance decline was some 4:1 in favor of advances. Metals is a space which was, did the best, 4% in the index itself. PSU banks continued the pullback, and real estate as a space did well. Actually, the FMCG index was the only one which was lower, except that most of the sectors were in the green. The top 3 gainers, all from metals and indices: Hindalco, Tata Steel, JSW Steel, your Tata Motors, ONGC, and Asian Paints, which did well as well. In the broader space, PSU banks, right, IOB stood out with very large volumes. Non-Nifty metal names, JSPL, Nalco. There were smaller names like JBM Auto, HEG, Fact, Praj Industries, sugar names like Triveni, Dwarikesh, Dhampur, and data patterns which stood out as well. As I said, breadth was fairly positive and strong. The Nifty is now bumping into an important level, which is basically the rising trend line all the way from June lows. It's a clean, straight, upward sloping trend line on the break of which the market accelerated its fall, and we are now back there at about 18,140. And I think a day more, 2 days more, of stable, normal kind of markets perhaps should give more confidence to the bulls that what we saw late last week perhaps was, not structural weakness, but just weaker hands getting shaken out and the market devoid of froth looking a little better. Back to you.
Right, Prashant, thanks a lot for that. Here's some global action now. China has announced more steps to relax its COVID curbs. In the latest, China's National Health Commission has announced it will be dropping COVID quarantine requirements for international passengers, which includes testing and centralized isolation. Travelers who produce negative test results 48 hours before departure can enter the country without applying for the Green Health Code. The relaxations will come into effect from the 8th of January. However, the NHC spokesperson has said that they will continue to step up vaccination for the elderly and children, and that they will continue to focus on meeting the medical needs of the general public.
Our focus is to robustly prepare health resources with a focus on meeting the medicine needs of the general public, striving out to protect the key groups, including the elderly and children. In particular, we will step up the vaccination of the oldest citizens, and we will earnestly enhance the pandemic response in rural areas. Categorizing and managing COVID-19 as type 2 infectious disease will still need the strong support from the general public.
Meanwhile, China reported 20,000 new cases on an average last week as per World Health Organization. However, it has not released data since the 23rd of December. Wall Street Journal's China Bureau Chief Jonathan Cheng gets us the COVID picture from Beijing and the vulnerability of the elderly population.
Households that have elderly people in them, which of course is most households, there may be a little bit of a complication there, and that elderly people in China are the most vulnerable. Many of them have not been vaccinated to the same degree that others have been. And of course, in the depths of winter with people who are 80 years and older, you would expect them to be the most vulnerable in any country, in any situation. And so I went and visited 3 hospitals in Beijing yesterday, went to the ICUs, and there the scene was quite grim. I mean, you really saw elderly people lying in cots in the hallway of hospitals. People are not getting treatment for many hours. They have oxygen tanks, IV drips, and all this other stuff. So, on the one hand, people are going to work, people are going to restaurants, people are going to cafes and bars again. But on the other hand, if you go to the hospitals, you can see that is also part of the equation here.
Well, back home, mock drills were conducted at hospitals across the country to check for preparedness of the healthcare facilities amidst the rise of COVID cases in several nations. Now, the government has already clarified that there is no need for panic and that the measures are only precautionary in nature. Health Minister Mansukh Mandavia was in fact at Delhi Safdarjung Hospital to oversee the drills. Abhimanyu Sharma gets us this story.
Mock drills are being conducted at COVID centers which have been prepared across the country to check for COVID preparedness. The Union Health Minister Mansukh Mandavia paid a visit to this facility at Safdarjung Hospital today morning. Several states have made such facilities where respective state health ministers are paying a visit to check for COVID preparedness. Though the situation is not severe as of now, it's not alarming. However, the governments are taking rearguard action to ensure that there is ample preparedness if at all there is a rise in positivity of COVID cases.
जो कोविड के लिए हैं 200 बेड्स हमने रखे हैं, उसमें 44 बेड तो बेकशिफ्ट हॉस्पिटल में ही हैं, जिसके अंदर सभी फैसिलिटी हमने यहाँ क्रिएट की है. पेशेंट का एग्जामिनेशन हो या उनका सैंपल लेना हो, टेस्टिंग करना हो, ऑक्सीजन लगाना हो या वेंटिलेटर पे जाना हो पेशेंट को अगर जरूरत पड़े, सब चीज़ें हमने मेकशिफ्ट हॉस्पिटल में तैयार की हैं.
The makeshift facility we are standing at right now comprises of different sections. This is the triage area where any new patient is brought in, and based on the severity of the COVID case and symptoms, the patients are segregated. The ones who are asymptomatic are sent to the usual COVID wards, whereas the ones who are displaying extremely severe symptoms are sent to the SARI ward.
If this patient is asymptomatic or only has mild fever, the patient goes to COVID ward and is managed symptomatically. But if this patient is becoming short of breath or requires high oxygen or ventilatory support, we take the patient directly to the COVID ICU.
So clearly, COVID preparedness is being looked upon not just by the center and states, but also at an individual hospital level. And doctors are making sure that ample machines, drugs and procedures are in place.
Well, Bharat Biotech has announced the pricing of its nasal COVID vaccine, Incovac. The vaccine has been priced at 800 rupees for private markets and for 325 rupees for central and state governments. Bharat Biotech says that the nasal vaccine will be rolled out as a booster dose in the last week of January. Those above the age of 18 will be eligible to take the vaccine dose. The company has, however, not yet released any efficacy data. Well, shifting focus now to the banking sector. The Reserve Bank says it saw double-digit growth in bank's balance sheet in FY22 for the first time in 7 years. Now, in its report on trends and progress of banking in India, the RBI said banks' capital to risk asset ratio strengthened from 16.3% in end of March 2021 to 16.8% in the same period this year. The report added that all banks met regulatory minimum capital requirement of 11.5%. It further said that lower slippages reduction in outstanding GNPAs have led to a decline in the overall GNPAs. The RBI said acceleration in income and contraction in expenditure have boosted banks' profitability. The report further said that the NBFC sector maintained comfortable liquidity buffers in FY22, along with adequate provisioning. NBFCs also showcased strong capital position and improving asset quality. Well, the government may miss its December deadline as far as releasing the Digital India Bill draft is concerned. Sources tell CNBC-TV18 that the regulatory frameworks being developed for digital companies needs more work. The draft bill will likely be released for public comments by early 2023. CNBC-TV18 also learned that the government is hoping to complete stakeholder consultation in time to table the bill in the monsoon session of Parliament. The bill, which aims to replace the IT Act of 2000, may also include a legal framework for blockchain and metaverse. Well, 5 out of 12 companies, including Ola and Uber, have scored a 0 in a report that rated digital platforms on the basis of work conditions for gig workers. PharmEasy, Dunzo, and Amazon Flex also scored a 0. The report was prepared by Fair Work India team in association with Oxford University. Now, what are the key takeaways? Well, for one, as far as the mechanics of this report are concerned, there were 12 companies that were surveyed. There were 3 markets that were taken into consideration. That's Delhi, Mumbai, Delhi, Bengaluru, and Kochi. From amongst these markets, the data points that emerged, there were scores given to all of these 12 companies. The highest scorer was Urban Company with a score of 7 on 10, whereas the likes of Swiggy scored about 5 on 10, Zomato scored a 4 on 10. Meanwhile, the likes of Ola and Uber scored a 0 on 10. Now, the factors that were considered were 5-fold. Number 1, pay, conditions, contracts, management, and representation. These were the factors that were considered, and it is on the basis of these 5 factors that these scores were given. Now, there were 2 key takeaways here. We spoke to the authors of this report. What they tell us is that there are 2 key takeaways. Number 1 is that the majority of these platforms are not comfortable with committing to or implementing some kind of a minimum wage framework or a minimum wage policy, and that is a trend that is increasingly emerging going forward. By speaking to these 12 companies in question, that's takeaway 1. The other major takeaway is there is an increasing amount of discomfort as a part of these companies to, in fact, number 1, negotiate or even acknowledge or recognize collective bodies which represent these gig workers or platform workers. There is a great degree of hesitancy on a part of these majority of these platforms, and this is cited as a big concern by Fairworks as a part of its report in saying that a representative body that reflects a common agenda of these platform and gig workers in the absence of any legal framework is critical, and that is something that should be taken up by these platforms as a part of this gig economy. Let's also keep in mind that these results come at a time when a petition is pending before the Apex Court that has raised similar concerns. In fact, as a part of our coverage, we also reached out to 2 of these platforms, that's Ola and Uber, for a comment on the scores that they've been given, 0 on 10, but both these companies are yet to respond to our queries. Well, moving ahead now, at least 4 employees were killed in a fire incident that broke out at one of the blocks of an API manufacturing plant of Laurus Labs in Visakhapatnam. 1 employee is undergoing treatment. Company tells CNBC-TV18 it has launched an investigation into the incident to determine the cause of the fire. The company also maintained that it sees no material impact on its operations. Apparel retailer V-Mart Retail has said that the discretionary consumption is suffering as inflationary pressures continue to hurt the wallets of customers. Managing Director Lalit Agarwal added that demand has dipped sharply in December as compared to pre-COVID levels.
In the December month, we are seeing a little lull, and then people are once again, The winter was not there for the last 15 days. And then now, once again, in this week, we are seeing winter coming back. So it is once again coming back. So largely it is driven by seasonality or festival or the need in the family, which is wedding. So need-based shopping is happening. But other than that, the aspirational levels are not getting met because there is a stress in the customer's pocket. So we are seeing a little dull from that perspective if we compare it from the pre-COVID levels.
Well, meanwhile, Shriram Finance Management tells us that there has been a pickup in demand for commercial vehicles, construction machinery, as well as used vehicles. Listen in.
We're seeing this pickup in demand from a small commercial vehicle to a medium and heavy commercial vehicles. In fact, we are also seeing demand coming up in construction equipment, machinery.
Well, travel website ClearTrip says it has been seeing steady demand this holiday season. ClearTrip CEO Ayappan R said that demand has been touching an all-time high in the last few days, adds that they haven't seen any holiday cancellations.
The demand has been like super unpredictable. The last 12 months has been a roller coaster for all of us in the travel space, whether it's airlines, hotels, bus operators, trains. I think for everyone, learning has been the key through this period, because you never know what's going to happen 3 months from now. All is well for the holiday period, and we haven't seen any cancellations. The demand that we have been touching has been like all-time high in the last few days, and we believe that's going to continue for weeks ahead.
Mobile device makers and technology companies in India are set to adopt USB Type-C as a standard charging port by March of 2025. Now, Consumer Affairs Secretary Rohit Kumar Singh says that the objective is to reduce the use of number of chargers by households and that to minimize e-waste in the country. Well, mobile phone manufacturer Xiaomi has partnered with Reliance Jio to offer true 5G services to its customers. The latest update provides eligible Xiaomi users with 5G connectivity. Now, Xiaomi models supporting the SA network received the update. The company assured that its smartphones have undergone thorough testing to ensure seamless experience of 5G. Well, the Power Ministry has signed an agreement with DRDO to implement an early warning system for vulnerable hydro projects and power stations in hilly areas. Now, the Power Ministry has said that this partnership will help mitigate measures against avalanches, landslides, and other geohazards. The Food Ministry has announced a 100% incentive on sugar sacrificed for producing ethanol from bee-heavy molasses, sugarcane juice, and syrup. The formula will come into effect from January of 2023. Well, with that, it's time now to slip into a very short break. But coming up on the other side, North India is in the midst of a cold wave. The Met Department predicts a fresh spell of cold wave conditions around New Year's Eve. And once-in-a-generation storm cripples western New York, leave at least 28 people dead. Thousands of passengers left stranded as airlines cancel flights. Welcome back. A quick look at the global headlines that we are tracking. Ukraine says Russian army attacked dozens of towns in eastern part of the country a day after Moscow accused it of attacking its airbase miles away from the front line. Meanwhile, Russian Foreign Minister Lavrov issued an ultimatum to Ukraine, asking them to surrender Russian-controlled territories. Ukraine President Zelensky, meanwhile, said that nearly 9 million people remain without electricity. Taiwan says it will be extending its compulsory military service rule from the current 4-month period to 1 year from 2024. The decision comes after the Taiwanese government accused China of one of its biggest incursions in its airspace. China said that the strike drills were in response to provocations from the US and Taiwan. At least 28 people have died in western New York, mostly in Buffalo region, as a blizzard continues to paralyze the state. 1.7 million people are without power, and cancelled flights have left hundreds of stranded passengers during this holiday season. Rescue teams are struggling to operate in high-impact areas. NBC's Bree Jackson gets us this special report.
The death toll from the weekend blizzard continues to climb as authorities in Erie County, New York, discover more and more victims.
Died in a car, died outside from exposure, died in a snow shovel or cardiac event regarding the snow blowing.
Additional snowfall is expected later today. The National Guard is already assisting New Yorkers, while the White House says the federal government is ready to come to the state's aid too, declaring a state of emergency. And tweeting this photo of President Biden reached New York Governor Kathy Hochul Monday.
We'll be getting through this together very soon. I feel confident of that. But the most important thing is, please stay at home for the next day.
The winter weather is causing travel chaos on the ground.
We are asking people to stay off the roads.
And at airports nationwide, delaying more than 8,000 flights after Christmas and nearly another 4,000 canceled.
We have just been stuck for, a good 18 hours now?
According to FlightAware, airlines have canceled more than 17,000 U.S. flights since last Wednesday.
Well, back home, North India is in the midst of a cold wave. Delhi witnessed one of its coldest Decembers in years on Monday. In a conversation with CNBC-TV18, the Met Department has said that the situation might improve in the next 2 days, but predicted fresh spells of cold wave conditions during New Year's Eve.
After a long period, that November, December, we were not having any WD. Now the WD is coming. On 28th night, it will affect the hill area. So we have predicted the light to moderate snowfall and rain also over Jammu Kashmir, Himachal Pradesh. There may be clouding over Punjab, Haryana. After that WD passes, New Year, we may get fresh spell of cold wave and fog.
Euphoria, scandal, meltdown, contagion, bankruptcy, manhunts, and finally arrests. If it's drama you were looking for, the cryptocurrency ecosystem had it all. 2022 became the year that broke crypto's back. Manisha Gupta recounts what could have been, what went wrong, and what 2023 holds for this asset class that could have been. Take a look.
The year 2022 witnessed the crypto winter loaded with sell-offs, scandals, layoffs, and unfavorable macros and markets. The shutdowns, rug pulls, and the contagions that followed made matters further difficult. The market is full of debt due to rise of centralized lending schemes. 2020 onwards saw a huge build-out in retail, yield-based DeFi, crypto shadow banking, and unsecured or under-collateralized lending. The pain started with a sustained sell-off in cryptos. For the current year, the prices have declined sharply, down by 60% for Bitcoin, Ethereum is down 64%, decentralized Mana is negative 88%, and meme coins Doge and Shiba Inu down 47 to 72%. The total crypto market capital hit peak at their $3 trillion, which has now come crashing down to below $1 trillion, a more than 70% of decline. The sell-off was accentuated by collapse of algorithmic stablecoin Terra USD. It was clear from the events that followed that the credit risks and counterparty risks were not assessed with vigilance. Down went the Celsius network, once valued at $20 billion. Same happened with Three Arrow Capital. Equinox, which was listed on NASDAQ, also shut shop. The other names like Wald, Voyager Digital met with the same fate. And towards the end of the year, the once valued at $32 billion FTX crypto exchange filed for bankruptcy, followed by BlockFi and Bitfront in Singapore. The other market, which is NFTs, and that was quite a rage and became a mainstream phenomena in 2021, also saw a meltdown in 2022, with volumes crashing nearly 70%. And then there is more, and this is from miners who, due to fall in crypto prices, have not paid electricity bills, leading them to sell their holdings. The total cryptocurrencies as of now stand at more than 10,000 in number, and in last 10 years, nearly 2,421 cryptos have failed. When markets started to fall, funds, lenders, others were forced to sell, leading to a domino effect. Street believes that 2022 may be drawing to an end, but the crypto winter could last another 6 to 8 months.
Well, that's all the time that we have for. It's a wrap on this edition of India Business Hour. Thank you so much for watching. News and updates continue right here on CNBC-TV18.